Subscribe to Bisbo and press the bell icon. See boring news turn into enjoyable stories. They found him wrist slashed, lying in a pool of blood. He was one of the 16 Indian crew members of a total of 18 on the Swiss-Italian ship MV Anastasia that had been forcibly anchored off the Saufadian port in China's Bohai Sea since September 20th, 2020, not even allowed to step foot on land. 60 kilometers away at Xintang port, the MV Jag Anand, another vessel with 23 Indian crew, was similarly restrained since June 13th, 2020. Both unwitting pawns caught in the middle of an international dispute. Both ships happened to be carrying Australian coal, a commodity China needs in bulk. However, Australia had been increasingly vocal against China recently. In 2017, they banned foreign political donations, citing reports of Chinese attempts to influence the political process in Canberra. Restricted Huawei, the Chinese tech giant, from bidding for their 5G networks. Cancelled 2 BRI, Belt and Road Initiative projects, among other Chinese deals. But it was likely that it was Australia's critical remarks on China's actions against democracy activists in Hong Kong, a criticism of their threatening stance and repeated violation of Taiwan's airspace, and their voicing of dissent against China's aggressiveness in the South China Sea that led to the events that followed. In May 2020, China retaliated by curbing imports of Australian beef and embargoed various commodities, including coal coming in from the island country. The Chinese authorities then found a perfect scapegoat in the Indian crew, a country with which they were having tensions with anyway. But as with everything China does, they were opaque about the real reasons.
Sorry, cannot take you off ship. Control measure to prevent the spread of corona.
But this lie was easy to see through, as ships from other countries were allowed to offload and leave. Meanwhile, the condition of the two Indian crew got worse day by day. Their access to fresh water was almost over. The vessel was infested with cockroaches and rats, and the temperature was freezing, often dropping to -3 degrees Celsius. Food stocks that came in once a month were mostly limited to baked beans, and even though some sailors developed skin infections and scurvy-like spots, they could not be treated, as only painkillers remained in their medicine cabinet. A doctor would only be allowed to visit if someone was dying. Even in jail there are medicines and you can move about. This was a floating jail. The sailors had reached the point of physical and mental fatigue. Anastasia was getting only 3 hours of internet access every day. Jag Anand had to pay $5, 370 rupees for as little as 50 MB of data, which in India costs only 32 paisa. And while that was a sucker for the stranded sailors, it also gave them bittersweet news. Some found out they had lost their loved ones, and one crew member, Avinash Tandel, could not even be present to witness the birth of his child. Then one 47-year-old sailor, unable to join his family after hearing that his wife and both sons tested positive for corona, took the ultimate step. His co-sailor Shardul Mahatre, a trainee marine engineer, was put on suicide watch to make sure his colleague didn't make another attempt. There is a reason international marine standards stipulate a maximum of 11 continuous months at sea for crew under normal conditions. Both crews had already served several months and were on their last voyage. So it is no wonder these men were at the end of their tether after being at sea for as long as 18 months. But the internet was also the seaman's savior.
Everyone came to know about the 39 Indian sailors only because the ships had internet access.
It enabled the crew to constantly pressure their employer and the concerned authorities to be relieved on a humanitarian basis. The families of the sailors too left no stone unturned, reaching out to anyone who could help, even the PMO. Weekends were worse because they knew offices will be shut and nothing will be done about their release. The ship's operator, the Mediterranean Shipping Company, also put pressure on Chinese authorities.
We refuse to offload the cargo till we are paid, and we urgently need a replacement crew.
It was the MV Jag Anand who were replaced first on January 18, 2021, after being detained for 199 days. Then on February 4th, the Indian embassy in Beijing sent an email to the crew at MV Anastasia. Chinese authorities have permitted a crew exchange. Both crews were released suspiciously close to the detent that took place at the Indo-China border. leading one to wonder if Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar had also taken up this matter at a diplomatic level. More than 40 cargo liners are caught in the crosshairs of the Australia-China dispute and still lie stuck in Chinese waters. And not only in Chinese waters, but many Indian crew are also stuck on ships in different places across the globe. The Iranian port of Bandar Abbas has detained the MV Bahman Darya's Indian-Pakistani crew for the last 20 months. They too rely on canned beans and defrosted rotis to fill their stomach and Ludo to keep themselves entertained. Stuck in limbo because their passports were lost by their employers. Close by in the Middle East, 23 of the 25 Indian crew of the Ever Given that got stuck in the Suez Canal are still stranded in the Great Bitter Lake in Egypt due to a legal tussle between Egyptian authorities and the ship's owner over compensation claims. 438 incidents of abandonment impacting over 5,500 seafarers were recorded between 2004 and 2020, according to the International Maritime Organization. Indian nationals account for 12.5% of the total number of sailors in the world and are often caught in international conflicts. But the money they get is good. Trainees in the Merchant Navy begin with about 25 to 30,000 rupees, while a second engineer can earn 4 to 5 lakhs a month and a first engineer upward of 8 lakhs. Being away from India for over 182 days in a year classifies them as NRIs and their income tax-free, making many seafarers ignore the struggles. The Maritime Labour Convention 2016 regulations lay down their rights, but most are unaware. Finally, after 146 days, on a Valentine's Day they will forever remember, the crew of MV Anastasia flew back to India to a joyous welcome, only to get into yet another lockdown that began on March 20th, barely 5 weeks after their release. Bisbo's limerick. The Indian crew were made a scapegoat, stranded offshore and not allowed off their boat. An international dispute to which they were mute inconvenienced their lives and eroded their hope. Subscribe to Bisbo and click on the bell icon to get notified whenever Bisbo releases a new video. Sources of all our information is listed in the video description section.